Guys, today we are going to start talking about our historical fiction unit. Your assignment today, as you had already been told, is going to be to do some research on your historical fiction book that you're reading. I just want to talk to you just for a second to introduce this unit to you. We're going to use this book, Night Boat to Freedom, to do some mini lessons with you to help you think the way you should think as you're reading historical fiction. So first of all, a historical fiction book is a fictional story that takes place in a particular time period in the past. Often the setting is real, but the characters are made up from the author's imagination. So elements of historical fiction would be that it would be a form of fiction, which is not true, and it's going to be based on historical events. It's presented in a realistic manner. Some characters may be actual characters, but not necessarily. The story's like a fictional artistic mix of fiction and historical events. So, how details in the setting can help us identify a time period. When we identify the setting, we ask ourselves, what kind of place is this? What does it feel like? And what's the time period of it? In historical fiction, we need to be able to describe what we notice about the setting of our text to help us visualize the book and the setting. So I'm going to use this book, A Night Boat to Freedom. It's by Margot Thies Raven, and she is an author who she passed away not too long ago in 2014, and she was inspired by historical events to write different books that were historical fiction books. And she's known for writing like 300-page novels, and then she takes out everything you don't need to know and she turns them into a little picture book, and she does some cool illustrations. So, at the beginning of the book, we see it says, it was in 1863, and one night I carried across about 12 on the same night. Somebody must have seen us, because they set out after me as soon as I stepped out of the boat back on the Kentucky side. From that time on, they were after me. So, this is by Arnold Gregson, and this was his account and others' account in this slave narrative collection. So she's listened to this slave narrative collection. It's just a collection of videos of where slaves have told their account of different things that took place during the time when the North and the South were at war with each other about slavery. And so she's based this book on this particular slave's recount. So here is a picture of the opening page. The pictures are by E.B. Lewis, and they are beautiful. Let me see if you can see this whole picture. All right, I'm going to read just about three or four pages. And what I want you to focus on as I read is just characters and setting. If I close my eyes, I can still remember being a boy in the pine board cabin where I was born on Christmas morning, and I got my name, Christmas John. I can see the river, too, that swept wide by my old master's big house in Kentucky, keeping us a boat trip away from Ohio and freedom. But mostly, I can see Granny Judith, who raised me from a baby, bending over her dye pots, boiling and stirring up hanks of thread. And this is a picture of her over her dye pots, boiling thread material so that she can dye it the color that she wants it to be. Color is going to be a big thing that we talk about, the symbolisms of color in this particular book. I can see her hanging thread out to dry, then taking a hank of it to weave up in the loom house. Weave it into a color of the rainbow coming from her old pot. Indigo dyeing pretty blue, bay leaves sun yellow, pine straw making purple, and bamboo turning turkey red, the color that stole Granny Judith from Africa and put her into slavery. And then here's a picture of her on the loom. So we know this story takes place in America in 1893, and when our country was divided between states that believed in slavery and states that did not. Anyone who helped runaway slaves could be arrested, punished, and sometimes even killed. One night by Pinewood Lake, Granny Judith told me the story of the strangers who came to her village and laid down a red flannel cloth in front of her. It was so pretty she grabbed for it, but they tricked her on and on with bigger pieces until they got her across a river and onto a ship. Lord, child, Granny Judith cried, when that ship sailed away, I wept to go home. But the ship sailed on across the ocean, and the pretty color of red turned the sad color of slavery for me. Here's a picture of Christmas John sitting by the fire listening to Granny Judith tell him stories of how she was in Africa and how they tricked her by showing her different colors of cloth and luring her to this boat because she wanted the material so bad. This is a picture of her as a young girl being lured onto the boat. And then this is a picture of the boat. Once they got her on this boat, they took her all the way across the ocean from Africa and they brought her to America. And she was taken into slavery. So you notice that this book takes place in Kentucky near a big plantation home, and their lives, the characters' lives, they all live in a pine board cabin. Christmas John lives with his grandmother, Granny Judith, and there's a wide divide between the states that divides slave land from the free land. And if they can just get to Ohio, then they can be free. But right now they are in Kentucky, and this is not a free state. So they are working as slaves. So Granny Judith's plan is to lead people out of slavery across the river to freedom, which would be in Ohio. So what I want you to do is I want you to think on what we know about the setting. We know that it's in Kentucky during the time of the American states were divided based on their beliefs. It's on a plantation with a big house, and they live in this pine board cabin. And they, the only thing that's separating them from freedom is the river between Kentucky and Ohio. And if they can just get on a boat and get across that river without getting caught, then they can be in Ohio and they can be free from slavery. So that tells you a little bit about the time frame so that when we read this book, you're going to be able to understand what's going on. So what you're going to do today in your notebook entry is you are going to Google the time frame in which the book you will be reading takes place. You're going to look for important historical events and important people of the time period, political issues, whatever that you find out as you read. You're going to jot some notes about what you learn. This information can be combined with others in your group so that once you begin reading and discussing your book, it's going to make more sense to you, knowing about that time and place in which your book takes place. And then you're going to create a slide like I showed you in your Google slide presentation for your book club group. And you're going to tell about the setting and the characters and the time frame in which this book that you're reading, your historical fiction book, takes place. So, go to Canvas and pull up 3-5 reading notebook entry, and that's where you are going to jot notes as you Google the time frame that your book took place and any events that have been mentioned in your book so far. Google those events and then jot some notes about what you know about that time frame, and then you will discuss these events with your group when you meet.